We begin with the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where the clock is winding down on the emergency declaration for Tokyo, Osaka, and 8 other prefectures. Osaka's governor is calling for intensive quasi-emergency measures if the declaration is indeed lifted on June 20th. The number of new cases in Osaka Prefecture on Monday was 57. It's the first time the figure has fallen below 60 in over 3 months. Governor Yoshimura Hirofumi visited a vaccination venue and told reporters the prefecture plans to consider easing the current restrictions on large-scale commercial facilities. But he's wary about returning to normal too quickly.
The measures involving bars and restaurants are more important than ever. The most important thing is that Osaka does not repeat the same mistakes. So with this in mind, we have to consider what needs to be done. Difficult decisions will be required.
Here in Tokyo, the number of new cases reported on Monday was 209, down 26 from the figure reported last Monday. But the average daily number of cases over the immediate 7-day period is higher than the last time the government decided to lift the emergency declaration. One expert says it's too early to act just yet.
The number of new cases isn't at a level where the emergency declaration can be lifted safely. Now there is more movement of people, including at night. This creates conditions that could trigger a surge in cases at any time. To avoid a rebound in Tokyo, for instance, the declaration should not be lifted unless the daily new cases drops to around 100.
The government's chief cabinet secretary also weighed in on the issue.
The matter will be considered comprehensively and carefully by consulting experts and sharing information with local governments.
Nationwide, over 930 new cases were confirmed on Monday. 60 deaths from COVID-19 were reported. The total number of patients in serious condition stands at around 850. Japan's government continues to face challenges posed by the pandemic and the approaching Tokyo Games. NHK conducted an opinion poll showing Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide's cabinet has hit the highest disapproval level since it was inaugurated last September. NHK conducted the telephone survey over the weekend. Over 2,000 people aged 18 or older were chosen randomly. About 60% of them responded. The disapproval rating was up 2 points to 45%, while the approval rating also rose 2 points to 37%. The poll asked about the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games. With organizers set to soon decide on the number of spectators allowed to enter the venues, respondents were almost evenly split among 3 options. 32% called for a cap on spectator numbers, while 29% said the games should be held without any spectators. And 31% wanted the games to be canceled. Last month, a survey revealed 49% felt that way. Now, almost 70% of the respondents said they were not satisfied with the explanation given by the government and organizers on why the games are going ahead. The military crackdown on civilians in Myanmar continues, with over 860 people reportedly killed since the February coup. It's now cast a shadow over the world of sports. As NHK World's Madison Watt reports, one swimmer has abandoned his dream of representing Myanmar at the Tokyo Olympics.
Under the military regime, I could not represent my country's flag in the Olympic Games because I knew it would be an exercise for propaganda.
27-year-old Win Tet-u is a swimmer based in Australia. He has represented Myanmar in numerous international swimming competitions and holds the country's 50-metre freestyle record. Until recently, he had been considered an Olympic hopeful. But after hearing about his fellow countrymen becoming targets of violent military attacks, he decided to take action. He attends protests against the coup in Australia, hoping to raise international awareness of the plight of the people of Myanmar. He posted online a public letter denouncing the Myanmar Olympic Committee, calling it a puppet of the junta. He announced he would not participate in the Tokyo Games under the stewardship of the committee.
And I'm fortunate that I can live in Australia, but they're there every day being tortured by the military. And This was what I had to do to show solidarity that I'm always thinking about them.
His parents had hoped that he could realise his dream of competing in the Olympics, but they understand and support his decision.
This time around, if he cannot swim for Myanmar, not to represent the Myanmar military government, I'm happy. I can take it.
Win Tet-u has launched a petition calling on the International Olympic Committee to renounce and expel the Myanmar Committee. He says he wants to keep the Olympic Games free from the stain of genocide.
I just hope to tell the world that this isn't just another political statement from an athlete. This is about protecting. This is about protecting the Olympic movement, the sanctity of what the Olympics mean.
Even though his goal of competing at Tokyo has come to an end, Win Tet-u still follows a grueling training program. He has not yet given up on his dream of one day going to the Olympics.
If democracy returns to Myanmar, and I feel that the values of the people will be very well represented by the Myanmar Olympic Committee, I would. If I can't do it as an athlete, I'll do it as a sports manager, as an administrator.
He hopes to see democracy return to Myanmar so that he may once again proudly represent his country's flag on the world stage. Madison Watt, NHK World, Melbourne.
Japanese industrial conglomerate Toshiba has dropped 4 senior officials nominated for board and executive positions. The move comes days after an independent panel concluded a shareholders' meeting last year was not conducted fairly. Toshiba held an extraordinary board meeting on Sunday to discuss how to respond to the report released by lawyers appointed by the company's top shareholder. The outgoing officials include 2 members of the audit committee, which had found no problem with the shareholders' meeting. The other 2 are senior executives the independent panel found were involved in colluding with the industry ministry to obstruct a proposal from the top shareholder. The chairperson of Toshiba's board, Nagayama Osamu, apologized on Monday for causing concern to stakeholders. He explained the firm's plan to work with third parties to look into the root cause. Nagayama said the probe will also examine the responsibility of Toshiba's former president and CEO, Kurumatani Nobuaki.
Kurumatani's role in causing the current management turmoil and undermining the trust of shareholders cannot be ignored.
Nagayama also said Toshiba will hold an extraordinary shareholders meeting to select new board members. A trial has begun in Tokyo for 2 Americans accused of helping former Nissan Motor chairman Carlos Ghosn flee Japan to Lebanon. They pleaded guilty on the opening day. Prosecutors say former Green Beret Michael Taylor and his son Peter Taylor helped Ghosn illegally leave Japan 2 years ago. A prosecution statement said Ghosn left Kansai International Airport hidden in a large container aboard a private jet and flew to Lebanon via Turkey. Ghosn had been awaiting trial on charges of financial misconduct. He was out on bail at the time. Prosecutors also say Ghosn's wife, Carol, asked Michael Taylor to help with the escape, and he agreed to do so 5 months earlier. Lawyers for the Taylors said a reason for their involvement was because they're related to Ghosn. Turning now to a long-standing legal issue between Tokyo and Seoul. A group of South Koreans has appealed a court ruling dismissing their demand for compensation from Japanese companies over wartime labor. The plaintiffs say the firms must be held responsible for what their lawyer described as grave human rights violations. In 2015, 85 former workers and their relatives launched a lawsuit against 16 Japanese firms. They're seeking compensation of about $90,000 each. A district court in Seoul rejected the lawsuit last week, arguing the plaintiffs cannot claim the legal right to damages from Japan as individuals. It's the first time a South Korean court has rejected a lawsuit of this kind since a set of rulings in 2018. At that time, the country's Supreme Court acknowledged individual rights to claim damages and ordered 2 Japanese companies to pay. The Japanese government maintains the right to claim compensation was settled by a 1965 bilateral agreement. As part of the deal, Tokyo provided Seoul with economic assistance worth $500 million, well over Seoul's annual national budget at the time. The defendant companies have not agreed to pay compensation. Some of their assets in South Korea have been seized, and preparations are underway for their sale. Israel's new coalition government has been sworn in, marking the country's first change of power in 12 years. But the new administration looks certain to have a tough time creating unified policies, as its members are deeply divided on Palestinian issues. The parliament approved the new government on Sunday by a narrow vote of 60 to 59. The coalition replaces the administration of Binham Netanyahu, who led the country from 2009. The coalition consists of 8 parties representing broad viewpoints of the right, left, center, and Arab Israelis. In his address to the Knesset before the vote, Naftali Bennett said the parties will sit together and forge forward where they agree. But having an Arab party in the government has drawn anger from right-wing lawmakers and their supporters. They plan to march in Jerusalem's Old City on Tuesday, raising concerns about possible clashes with Palestinians. Next in weather, the greater Tokyo area entered the rainy season on Monday. Our meteorologist Jonathan O has the outlook for here and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, the rainy season began on Monday for those in the Tokyo area and the Kanto Koshin region, and we had some storms firing up along the eastern central areas of Japan. One location seeing some hail in Yokote City in Akita Prefecture. And we're looking at some more rain to really push in from the west. Now, we talk about the rainy season, but notice the front way down here and then curving back toward the west into China. But it's going to flip itself around and push toward the east, and it's going to help bring up the rain chances as we go throughout the day Tuesday. So have the umbrellas for those of you in Kyushu looking at some rain, also into South Korea seeing some rain. It was hot for the past few days. The rain is going to change things up just a little bit here, and looking at a chance for some rain into Tokyo as well with a high of 26, 29 Osaka. From Fukuoka down to Naha, you will need your umbrellas as we go through the day on Tuesday. We're talking about a hot weather pattern across the western areas of Europe. We've been having a high pressure system that's been really controlling the pattern. If you notice down here, this little batch of clouds, that's due to a cut-off low pressure system that's right off the Iberian Peninsula. So that's going to help usher in some of that hot air as well. We do have a low pressure system clipping through the Scandinavian Peninsula, and so that's going to bring a little bit of cloud cover to the far northern areas of the region. But Stockholm looking at some sunshine by Tuesday with a high of 22, looking near 30 degrees in Rome, 34 in Madrid. Some of these locations seeing temperatures at anywhere from 8 to 10 degrees above average for this time of year. So take it easy if you're going to be outdoors, because it's going to be quite hot. Western areas of the United States also dealing with really hot weather as well, with severe drought conditions in many locations. We'll continue to see that dry pattern with heat continuing as we go into Tuesday, a high of 37 in Denver, 33 in Los Angeles. Showers, though, into the Pacific Northwest for Tuesday. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
The French designer of a Chinese nuclear power center in Guangdong warns that a gas buildup presents an imminent radiological threat, unnamed U.S. officials tell CNN. In Myanmar, lawyers for Aung San Suu Kyi defend the ousted leader on the first day of her trial on corruption charges brought by the military. Israelis have a new government as 8 parties form a coalition with Naftali Bennett as Prime Minister. And a study says the COVID-19 vaccine of U.S. company Novovax is over 90% effective against several versions of the coronavirus.
Speaking after NATO's summit in Brussels, President Joe Biden said he would make it clear in his meeting with Russia's President Putin Wednesday that there were areas where cooperation is possible. But if Mr. Putin chooses not to, the United States will respond. Despite one of the world's fastest vaccine rollouts, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has delayed the final lifting of COVID restrictions in England by at least 4 weeks. The first Israeli government in 12 years, not led by Binham Netanyahu, has been getting down to business. The former Prime Minister, though, refused to host a traditional handover ceremony for his successor, Naftali Bennett. The jailed journalist Roman Protozovich has made an unexpected appearance at a news conference in Belarus, flanked by uniformed officials, in what the opposition called another appearance under duress.